Hello and welcome back to the Right on Crime podcast. I'm Nikki Pressley. I'm the Deputy Director of Right on Crime here at the Texas Public Policy Foundation, and I am joined today by Ross Jackson, our Senior Policy Analyst, who actually started as my intern and then my research analyst and then my policy analyst, and now you have a new promotion to Senior. So welcome, Ross.
Thanks.
Thank you for joining me today.
Glad to be here.
Well, you recently had an op-ed come out on sexual assault clearance rates. So I would love for you to kind of describe what is a clearance rate for anyone who isn't familiar, and then also how are they measured, what do they measure, and what do they look like here in Texas and also on a national scale?
Sure. So a clearance rate is basically the number of cases that a police department will solve in a year over the number of cases they open. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean cases aren't open from previous years or closed from previous years, but it's a yearly statistic and a yearly measure of what crimes are being opened, what crimes are being solved by police departments. And across Texas, this widely varies. So you have some departments across the state that have higher clearance rates for homicide, higher clearance rates for sexual assault. But statewide, what it's looking like right now is Texas is solving about 2/3 of homicides and around a quarter of sexual assaults throughout the state. And this has been a slight improvement from previous years, where I think about 4 years ago, you were looking at police departments solving closer to 50% of homicides and around 20% of sexual assaults. So we've seen some improvement, but these numbers are still really low. I mean, if you think about it, like solving 2/3 of murders, so that's not like that much justice being served. And that's just the number of cases that are identified as by police. That doesn't mean like they're finding the guy, they're prosecuting the guy, they're holding them accountable at the end of the day. That just means, hey, we know who it is, and, you know, we're sending the case off to be prosecuted.
Right. So a clearance is basically defined as the police have identified the person or made an arrest. So
Yeah.
that's it. So let's say 2/3 of those homicides, the police have identified the person. That's where that number stops. So we don't know how many prosecutions are actually happening, how good of quality the evidence is to move forward, all those things. So this is just that very first metric to see how many cases we're actually solving and identifying the perpetrator or the alleged perpetrator.
Right.
So when we talk about sexual assault cases, one of the most troubling realities is how few are actually resulting in an offender being identified, like you said.
Yeah.
Previously, it was less than 20%. What do low clearance rates tell us about the state of public safety right now and our investigative measures for sexual assault cases?
Yeah, so I'd say they're lacking the resources, and it's pretty evident given the statistics that we're seeing right now. I mean, we have some cities that are more successful. I think Dallas has somewhere in the 30s percent they're solving sexual assault cases, but some, like San Antonio, it's 13%. I think it's less than 13%, which is staggering, I mean, to think about. But yeah, clearly departments are lacking the resources they need to solve these cases. We know that they're short on forensic staff. We know that they're short on funding for sending these to laboratories to get investigated further. So that's the kind of crisis that we're dealing with right now.
And so let's take Bexar County or San Antonio, for example. So almost 90% of sexual assault cases are not being solved in that department. So what message is that signaling to perpetrators? And also, what message is it signaling to perpetrators? And what is one of the biggest deterrents to crime?
The biggest message it's sending is you can get away with it, that you're not going to get caught, that you're going to keep doing these horrendous crimes to people, and you're never going to be held accountable for it. So what's stopping them? The biggest deterrent to crime is swift justice. If you're not being caught and you're not being held accountable for your actions, things aren't going to change. Women are not going to see the justice they need when they are violated by a horrendous offender, and nothing's going to change.
So a lot of public conversations about crime focus on arrest, prosecution, or sentencing. And I think you just made a good point. Like, the biggest deterrent to crime is actually the probability of being caught and the swiftness of being caught. And a lot of times we have these discussions about sentencing enhancements, like raising a crime from a misdemeanor to a felony. And people think that that's going to deter the crimes from occurring.
Yeah.
But really, the real problem is the fact that we're not solving the crimes and that people are not being held accountable. So thank you for pointing that out. But why is investigative capacity such a critical and often overlooked part of public safety?
I think people look at whether or not certain crimes that are visible are being solved. Like if a case is like really highlighted and it's really public and they find the guy, then they're not really paying attention to all the other cases that get swept under the rug. And sexual assault cases are not really highly publicized. I mean, they happen every day. There's hundreds and thousands of them, and they're just not the high profile cases that people care about, you know. And so I think that's one of the reasons that we're not seeing the justice served as it should be.
Mm-hmm. And so I want to go back to something you said, how clearance rates differ from jurisdiction to jurisdiction so much.
Yeah.
So what do you think is sort of that driving factor? The culture, resources, capacity.
I mean, it's a lot of things. So rural and urban cities are very different. They have very different resources. One of the biggest things you can see this in is technology and the availability of prosecutors and the size of departments and that sort of thing. So in Houston, you're going to have a lot more resources, a lot more advanced technology than you are in Bernie, Texas. That's just the way it's going to be. But yeah, I mean, the culture of a department can change. I mean, if they're given the resources they need, they're going to be able to solve these crimes at a much higher rate. And then honestly, that's going to deter crime a lot. So you're going to see the rates go down significantly, hopefully.
Mm-hmm. And so we're talking about resources, which resources oftentimes means more money.
Yeah.
And a lot of people hear that and they just think, okay, we're going to give them more money and it's going to be a bigger budget and it's going to be the same results. So what does smart, targeted investments look like in this space as it pertains to clearance rates?
Yeah, so we know what works. We know that there's methods that police can use, like hotspot policing, for example, patrolling neighborhoods that we know a lot of crimes happen in. If we put our resources in the right places and put the right people in the right places to prevent crime from happening or to hold people accountable when crime does happen, then we're going to fix the issue. We don't need to just give them money and put no strings attached and not hold them accountable to seeing the results that we gave them the money for in the first place. So it's not just unloading all of this funding and hoping they do something good with it. It's putting strings in it, making sure that they give us data that shows that it's going to the resources that it needs to be, and they're getting the results that they're asked to.
So I feel like what you're alluding to right now is the Violent Crime Clearance Rate Grant Fund that we established last session in Texas. So just for anyone listening who is not aware, we did pass a law last session that the governor did sign. Unfortunately, it was not funded, but basically what it did was establish a grant fund that jurisdictions, so local departments and sheriff's departments, could apply for funding through this grant, and that funding could go towards hiring crime analysts, training and retention, forensics, technology, even some small things like software updates that law enforcement had requested be included. So I guess my question is, at what point do you think it goes from a local problem to a state problem where the state actually does need to step in and fund this grant program and allow these local jurisdictions to apply for those funds? And why is it the state's job to step in and do that?
So, I mean, if you look at the original purpose of government, like one of the primary purposes is public safety. Like if we don't keep our public safe, there's no point in having a government in the first place. We might as well just be in anarchy. So there's that aspect of it. And there's also the aspect that no problem is just a local problem. Like we are the state of Texas. We're not like defined by just our individual cities. Like one city's problem is another city's problem. If Austin doesn't take care of their crime problem, then it affects every surrounding city and jurisdiction that we can think of. And so that is really why the state has an obligation to provide public safety. And if departments aren't attaining the resources they need to be able to solve the crimes that are happening in their own jurisdictions, I 100% believe it's the duty of the state to step in and say, okay, like, let's not just do this for them. Let's do this for everybody that's living in the state of Texas.
Well, in addition to how crime is kind of not, it doesn't stay local, right?
Yeah.
Criminals can move around.
And they do.
And they do. In addition to that, I think a big reason that the state should allocate funds to the grant program is that a lot of our local jurisdictions, while they may no longer be defunding the police because we've prohibited them from doing that at the state level through legislation a few years ago, but they may not be funding them adequately for the population growth or rise in crime in certain areas or rise in certain crimes. Like I know Bexar County had an increase in car theft, all of that.
Yeah.
So basically, local jurisdictions are really not giving law enforcement the resources they need, even if they're not defunding them. So it really is time for the state to acknowledge that and really support law enforcement and make sure that they're getting the resources they need, even if their local councils are not doing so. And that's also why in the grant program, we made it clear that the funds go directly to the departments and not through the city council to be allocated so that the department themselves can identify what they need it for most. So I just wanted to add that to to your point. And so if lawmakers made solving violent and sexual crimes a true priority, what are the first investments you'd want to see? People, technology, forensic capacity? I mean, what has our research shown is maybe the most impactful? Or is it really just dependent on the jurisdiction?
It is dependent on the jurisdiction, but I think that we've seen from recent investments like up in DFW, they poured a whole bunch of money into getting these backlogs of rape kits solved. And I think they had like over 900 kits that were just sitting in with the department and hadn't gone anywhere. And some of them were years old. And they recently just poured a whole bunch of money into that and were able to bring these victims some comfort and some justice that they have been denied for a very long time. So I think it is dependent on the jurisdiction, but forensic analysts are a huge need throughout the entire state. I think that's something that I definitely want to see them pour more resources into. Staffing is an issue in almost every department. We've kind of recovered from the 2020 era of defund the police, but not entirely. Some cities like Austin, I think they reported recently that almost everyone in their department was working serious overtime, and like most of their compensation was coming from overtime. So that just shows you how strained their department is in terms of staffing.
And that also doesn't contribute to the best culture when everyone is running
overworked,
overworked, tired, growing resentful. So I think that's great. What gives you some hope to end it all, wrap it in a bow? What are you hopeful about when it comes to clearance rates and what you're seeing in the state as far as solving more crimes?
I think clearance rates have improved a little bit. I mean, like I said earlier, in 2021 and 2022, I think we had around a 50% homicide clearance rate, and now it's up to 2/3 of homicides are being solved. So we've seen some improvement, but it's not to the level that we need to be seeing it to make sure that justice is served in all of our communities. But we're on the upward trend. Crime rates across the country in most areas, it's going down. So our investments in newer technology and staffing has worked. And I think the culture is changing a little bit around the narrative of police being bad. I think we are stepping away from that. I think people are seeing the necessity of it, and that shaming them and making it a job that nobody wants is not working, and it does not make us safer. If we really want police to be doing their job and doing it well, we need to support them with the resources they need to be able to do their job. And I think people are finally getting that message.
Yeah, That's great. Yeah, I'll just, my final note would be, I would encourage anyone who is not familiar with the clearance rate grant program that passed to look at it. And hopefully we can get some funding next session. And even if it's just a little, to try a little pilot in a few areas, that would be amazing. So we could really measure it. But thank you, Ross. Thank you for joining me today. And if you would like any more information about Right on Crime, you can go to rightoncrime.com.